Good evening, or afternoon if I rescheduled this video to go out on Sunday. Today we're going to look at another of those weird, illogical areas of railways in London and ask why it has to be like that. If you've been on the East London line of the London Overground, you may have noticed that there are two stations at New Cross. There's New Cross and New Cross Gate. And New Cross is off on a funny little branch on its own. And the two stations are only about half a mile apart. They even have out-of-station interchange. It doesn't seem to make much sense. It's always been that way. When the East London line was first built, it ran from Shoreditch and Liverpool Street at the northern end and splayed off into two little legs at the southern end. Well, how did we get here? It goes back to the early days of railways in London. There now follows some complicated railway history which I'm going to try to keep as simple as possible. The first railway in London, or at least the first passenger railway, was the London and Greenwich. They opened their first line in February 1836 between Greenwich and Spa Road, then extended in December that year to London Bridge. In 1839, the London and Croydon Railway opened, which shared London Bridge and part of the line out of it. They had a station at New Cross. In 1845, the London and Greenwich Railway was taken over by the South Eastern Railway, and in 1846 the London and Croydon Railway was taken over by the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway. These two larger companies were rivals, particularly over the lucrative commuter traffic in South London, and both were quite expansionist. In 1849, the South Eastern Railway opened the North Kent line, which passed through New Cross. So they decided to build their own station there, no doubt hoping to snaffle some of the commuters into London Bridge for themselves. This station was also called New Cross, which meant that there were now two identically named stations, both serving London Bridge, less than half a mile apart. So that's how we ended up with two stations in New Cross. How did we end up with the odd situation with the Overground? Well, that comes down to the East London line. In 1843, the Thames Tunnel opened. This had been intended as a major highway between the north and south sides of the River Thames in London's busy docklands. But it was a flop. It took far longer and cost far more to build than its promoters anticipated, and the planned road connections were never constructed. So it opened as an unnecessarily large pedestrian subway, which was a novelty at first, but soon gained a reputation for being seedy and crime-ridden. It never made its money back, and in 1865 it was sold off to the East London Railway Company. This company was a consortium of different railway companies based to the north and south of the river, who saw the advantages of having a cross-river connection in the east. The companies involved were the Great Eastern Railway, the Metropolitan Railway, the District Railway, the London Chatham and Dover Railway, the South Eastern Railway, and the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway. And that's an interesting consortium, because, apart from the Great Eastern Railway, all the companies were at each other's throats in one way or another. The Metropolitan and the District had fallen out over the Circle Line, and the London, Chatham and Dover were even bigger enemies of the South Eastern than the London, Brighton and South Coast were. Still, it's not every day that a conveniently train-sized dual-bore tunnel under the Thames becomes available, so they were able to put their differences aside, at least for long enough to come to an agreement. That being said, everyone wanted their cut. If they were going to pay for this thing, they'd better get access to it. Since the southern end of the line would be in New Cross, both the London, Brighton and South Coast and the South Eastern insisted that it should go to their stations. The line to the Brighton station opened in 1869, and the spur to the South Eastern one opened in 1880. But this led to a confusing situation where a southbound East London line train could be going to one of two stations with the same name. On maps and on the front of trains, the stations were usually identified as New Cross SER or New Cross LBSC. In 1923, the mainline railways of Britain were grouped together into four mega companies. The former South Eastern and the London, Brighton and South Coast both became part of the Southern Railway, which of course meant that there was no easy way of distinguishing the new crosses. So the Southern renamed the old London, Brighton and South Coast station to New Cross Gate, and so it remains to this day. Not that confusion was totally avoided. You may have noticed that platforms at New Cross have letters rather than numbers. That's because the two stations used to share staff, so using different systems prevented ambiguity. The stations are both useful, serving different and rather busy commuter lines, so it makes sense to retain both of them on the overground, even if they are close together. But the fact that they both exist is another of those weird historical quirks. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If so, please do leave a like and perhaps subscribe for more. I would like to thank my donors on Ko-fi and Patreon and here on YouTube for your support. You are the disused tunnel to my railway company. And I'll see you all again very soon. Cheerio.